This is a presentation of the Sports Source Digital Network. Presented by Hearthside Bank.
With City and Forest wobbling, could we see Bournemouth and Newcastle still Champions League spots? We'll tell you next. It's the EPL in 20 minutes. Welcome into Sports Source Premiere on the Sports Source Digital Network. I am Will West alongside Chris Carroll. Chris, let's get right to it. Manchester City. I just assumed they were going to figure things out, and now they are wobbling unbelievably. Now we also see Forest wobbling a little bit at the top. We see this every year. Some team that's normally mid-table, bottom half of the table, that gets into a Champions League spot, and then the spring comes, and they slowly start to fade. But it does beg the question, could we now see Bournemouth and Newcastle maybe steal those Champions League spots from Forest and from Manchester City?
Possibly. Let's take those two in turn. Man City first. Talking about a wobble, I think three wheels are off their wagon now. I thought it was a wobble to start with. I expected them to turn it around, but I watched them play the other day against Liverpool, and they just looked devoid of ideas. Just playing pretty little triangles around the outside of the penalty area with no Haaland up top, no ideas. I don't know what Grealish has done to upset Pep. Doku looks all fancy footwork and no end product. So I really think they're done. I do. I can't believe I'm saying that. But I think they're going to wobble a career off below top four. Forest, they are wobbling, but I saw some fight. I watched the Newcastle Forest game. What a fantastic match that was. Forest, after being 4-1 down at half-time, they came back into it, put up a real good fight. So I can see Forest sticking around, doing well. The other two now, does that open spots for Newcastle and Bournemouth? Yes, for Newcastle, for sure. The standout team out of these four for me is Bournemouth. What Iraola is doing there and what Bournemouth's done as a club is absolutely unbelievable. If you're my age, if you're between my and your age, I know that's a big spread.
Yeah.
But you don't think of Bournemouth as a Premier League team. For decades, they were third tier, fourth tier. Every now and then they get in the second tier. Only the last 10 years they've been in the Premier League. Their ground holds 11,000 people. 11,000. Look at the budget they're working with compared to your Man Uniteds and so on. 11,000. They're not selling shirts around the world because no one knows where Bournemouth is outside of the UK. You know, nobody's ever even heard of Bournemouth. So what they're doing on a budget is remarkable. The fact that they're sixth right now, or even thinking about the top four, is unbelievable. So I would love to see them get in the top four because I will always root for the underdog. Will they? I don't think so. But I think Forest and Newcastle could well be in there.
Yeah, look, I want to see. I still will believe in City until I see this end. I know that Pep is telling us not going to happen. We're not winning this thing. Mm-hmm. And right now they look incredibly wobbly. But if you look at it statistically, they're only behind Liverpool in goals even in 2025. So the issue is what they are at the back. How much better play can they get at the back? I agree with you. Grealish, for whatever reason, seems on the outs. De Bruyne, it feels like Pep's trying to push him to leave at the end of the season, even though there are rumors that De Bruyne is willing to stay on and maybe a part-time role. I still buy into them. Part of it's because I look at the rest of their schedule, and it's really, really easy. Forest, though, I have a concern about. Forest still plays Arsenal, City, United, Spurs, Villa, Chelsea. Now, only two of those matches are on the road. But still, that is really rough for that Forest squad, especially if they start wobbling. I do wonder what their confidence level is going to be. So I want to see, I think Newcastle's going to be fine. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with the way that it'll be interesting to see with Newcastle. It seems like there's pressure on right now. You had the chairman fly in over the weekend and watch them almost blow that lead against Forest. So there's a lot of pressure right now on how. But I still believe in Manchester City because talent usually wins out, especially when talent has the best manager in all of football right now, and Pep Guardiola. I believe City's going to be there at the end, and they are still getting goals. They'll figure out the back end, but I don't know if I believe Bournemouth can get there. I would love to see it happen. What do you think it would mean for Bournemouth to be able to make that move and be in a Champions League spot?
If Bournemouth got in the Champions League, it would almost be up there. Maybe a bigger achievement than Leicester winning the Premier League. Absolutely, yes. From where they've come from, the size of the club, It's just unbelievable. 11,000 go to their games. I went to watch UT play basketball the other day. There was nearly double the amount of people watching the basketball game. You know, it really is remarkable, and it shows there's no big superstars in there, no massive names. It shows what can be done with a coach and a group of players and a lot that aren't superstars. You know, and it would be absolutely huge. And I hope they're going to qualify for one of the European.
Yes.
You know, one of the European.
It could be Europa League that they land up, but either way, I still think that would be pretty massive for them. It would. But if to get top 4 would be unbelievable. All right, let's talk about the Champions League, because we had the Champions League draw. We're down to the round of 16 right now. I don't understand the need to seed this at this point. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I even went through the Champions League's website this morning to try to find out the point. For me, when you're a massive legacy brand like the Champions League is, like UEFA is, you don't just make changes arbitrarily. You do it when it adds value to something. You could still have the same number of matches without having the seeding like this. It just seems like they tried to create an American-style ranking system to a situation that's a tournament, and you don't need to have an American-style ranking system mid-tournament now. Am I wrong to look at this and say it's just pointless?
No, and I go back before the Champions League to the days of the European Cup. There was no seeding then. I think if you seeded it now, you're going to help the big boys again. They get enough help as it is. It used to, the European Cup, the Champions League, used to be a Champions League of purely the champions. So the top one from each country played, and there was a 32 it was a 32 team knockout. No seeding whatsoever. Now it's a champion and 3 runners up go in there. So they're making sure they're shoehorning the biggest boys around who've got the most money. They're going to finish 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. Still into the Champions League, and then to seed it again once we make the draws would really be, you know, we'd be ensuring Madrid and Barcelona are in the final.
Liverpool,
you're going to be in the final So I think it should be as it was. I think when sorry to harp back historically, but when Forest won, they entered the Champions League, European Cup for the first time. They had to play the holders first round, and the holders happened to be Liverpool. 2 teams. Now, there's an argument that you shouldn't have 2 teams from the same country meeting this early.
Which we actually have
which we
right
do,
now. We have 2 Spanish sides facing each other, 2 German sides
Absolutely,
facing each
other. And possibly Liverpool and Villa next game. So you got to play the best. You got to beat the best to win it. Let's not favour the big teams anymore. Don't seed it. Just pull them out the hat and let them go.
Do you like as far as the matchups are concerned? PSG, Liverpool's pretty strong. PSV, Arsenal, I love that. Bruges versus Villa, I think is a fantastic matchup as well. Anything like the matchups are still pretty good at this round.
Yeah, I think it makes it interesting. I think the fact that it makes it interesting earlier. Champions League traditionally got interesting semi-final, quarter-final. Now, what is it, last 16? And you've got Madrid against Atletico. You know, you've got Real and Atletico Madrid playing against each other. So that makes it interesting already. The 2 German teams playing. There's interest immediately. So I like it, yeah.
With Promotion Relegation, that is our buy or sell segment that we do here on Sports Source Digital Network Premiere. All right, so one team that we're promoting, one team that we're relegating. Okay. Let's start with your promotion, Chris.
Well, I'm going with a person.
Or a person,
I'm going person, not team. David Moyes. I've got to promote him. I've got what he's done with Everton, and going back to what you can do on a low budget. When he came in about a month ago, Everton was something like 2 points off the relegation zone. Now they're a month later, 14 points off the relegation zone. Yep. It's amazing. And another point against Man United the other day. It's incredible. It's incredible what he's done. And
to see out, look, Sean Dyche is a guy that you and I both have a lot of respect for. But to see a squad that Dyche could do nothing with, to see Moyes be able to step in and have this much success is pretty incredible. And he's doing some interesting things. And like we mentioned it last week, my target man was what was the Spanish midfielder that they brought in from Brazil, Alcaraz, and they end up benching him after he has a goal and 5 shots, 2 shots on goal. And they bench him and move Decore up to the attacking midfielder role, and he ends up getting a goal against Manchester United. I mean, it's interesting what he's doing with the lineup as well.
It's a sign of a happy squad. He's giving them more confidence. They'll play anywhere. They won't moan. They'll get on with it. They're interchangeable. He's giving them confidence, and a lot of that's chemistry and man management. And he's an experienced guy. Well, they can all play. You can only do so much on a training field. Getting the players to play for the manager with confidence. That's what he's done there.
I'm gonna promote Villa. I think what they've done, Rashford as well as he's playing Asensio, what he has added to that club. But what they did was take maybe a well-achieving group of young players, right, that sometimes can deal with injuries. They have some veterans there who can deal with injuries. Tyrone Mings can deal with injuries. Again, sometimes is injured. What they did is you went and got 2 world-class players.
Yeah.
One that's aging, one that's had trouble at his current club, and it seems like everyone's happy. And what Asensio has added from a sense of professionalism, it seems like, to Villa right now has been pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And the compliment he's paying Rashford, what he sees in Rashford as a professional, again shows how a player can come from one environment where he's not playing well, go into a different environment, different coach, different group of players, happy environment, and now Rashford's performing. So yeah, I'm Villa looking really good at the right time of the season. They could put a run together too.
They absolutely could. All right, who are you relegating this week?
This could be the same every week. I'm going with VAR. It's anything to do with soccer, right? No, it doesn't have to be a team or a person.
Yeah.
VAR, what an absolute mess. I could go on a rant here. It was brought in, we talked about VAR on a different show, brought in to stop arguments, to clear things up. And I'm going to use the Everton Man United as an example. Referee gives a decision as a penalty. VAR had to get involved. And we keep hearing about this clear and obvious error. Has it been? If it's a clear and obvious error, we're going to overrule it. Well, it wasn't a clear and obvious error, but they're still got involved. The referee overrules it because he doubts himself, and it's still it's still going on. The argument still goes on. If it was just the referee's decision, there would have been an argument that day amongst the fans, and then it would have all been forgotten about. But VAR come in their wisdom. They're just messing up the game. It's an absolute disaster.
I'll go with it. I know they won, and I know they're on 3 straight. But Spurs, I mentioned to you before the show, that was the worst Spurs performance I've ever seen in a win against Ipswich. There were, especially the back end, it made no sense what they were trying to do. Center backs trying to dribble out from the back, turning the ball over, and then doing it again. And I'm like, okay, when it happens the first time, that's a problem. When it happens, when the guy just does it again because there's no accountability from Ange on the sideline, that's where it drives me nuts. There were... I counted no less than 7 times where 3 players on 1 man with the ball, 2 players unmarked, and if Ipswich had any talent whatsoever, they would have burned Spurs for that. There is 0 discipline at the back end for this team. There's 0 accountability from Ange at the back end for this team. It's the old John Madden line of winning is a great deodorant, right? And they're winning right now because they just have more. They're getting healthy. They have more talent than the teams they're facing right now. But that was an awful performance at the back end for Spurs. And at some point in time, someone has to hold them accountable within the coaching staff or the director. Something has to happen. I've never seen a worse performance at the back end for Spurs.
Really? Well, I can see you're passionate about that.
Yeah,
Let me put a positive on this.
I'm bothered about it.
It's a good day that you're relegating them after 3 wins on the bounce.
True.
Spurs are looking good. It might not be looking good, but they're getting wins, and that'll change the confidence within the club. So Spurs won last week. Wolves won last week. We're sitting pretty and smiling here.
There we go. All right, let's get to Manchester United, a team that is not on the bounce. Manchester United, the worst performance United's ever had finished was 8th last year. That's their worst Premier League performance. They finished 7th one other time. They are now currently 15th on the table. This week, the Glazers lay off 200 employees within Manchester United. It's a train wreck. You look at different players that leave United. Rashford, one of them. Anthony, another one. You have the young man that went to Korea. That's the Sancho. That took off. So when people leave, they get better. It's you can bring in a new manager, and it doesn't matter. Right now, they have the 3rd highest payroll in the EPL. But if you look at the players that they're paying, I mean, a lot of them are not aging, but they're veteran players who are pretty good, not great. Mason Mount, Luke Shaw, people like that are on the wrong side of 26, 28, I would say, wrong side of their prime, who are injury prone. You have, and instead of paying a few players at the top, young players, and then some guys with steel in the middle that can try to bring this together, they're paying pretty much 12, 15 players, £100,000 a week. Yeah. And so they have an exorbitant payroll, even though it seems like they have no talent whatsoever.
Yeah, it is a mess. And it looks like everybody's making excuses. And be it at board level, making everybody but the first team pay for their lunches now in the restaurant or whatever.
Because they're going to cut their way to prosperity, right?
Yeah, exactly. I know it's crazy. And then you got guys like Casemiro making 350 grand a week,
something like that.
So they can blame everybody else. It's not good at the board level and down and the scouting level perhaps, but it's got to be changed on the pitch. It's got to be changed on the field with the manager and the players. And you can complain about the players as well. But they've spent a lot of money on these players. You don't luck your way into the Premier League as a player. These have got long, worn paths of players. Even if you're a young player, 20-odd, you've been going at 16, you've been maybe at Ajax or Feyenoord. A lot of the guys have come from Holland. You know, a couple of the guys come from Holland with Ten Hag. And they've been playing well for those teams. So they're all great players that have been brought in, and all of a sudden, they become bad players. Now, why? Why is that?
They leave and go somewhere else and play well, right?
Absolutely, yes. So the problem isn't Jim Ratcliffe there. He's not coming in and doing the team talk and the training. You know, they could blame that, and the more excuses they hear around them, then they all buy into those excuses. Those players need to walk into training, and I watched them in the first half against Everton the other day, and they looked absolutely fed up. They looked miserable. They looked like they didn't want to be there. They need to walk into training next time and go, you know what, we're playing soccer for a living. We play for Manchester United. We earn 100 grand a week. If that's not an incentive, I don't know what is to go and perform. So the manager needs to make some changes, stop being stubborn in the way he's playing, because apparently it's his way or no way. He needs to look at, and this is what the absolute opposite of what David Moyes has done.
Yeah.
He needs to look at those players, go, how am I going to get a tune out of these players? This is what we're going to do.
If you remember the Rashford situation, he went out two nights before a match with City. Not the night before.
Right.
2 nights before he went out, and manager didn't like that.
Yeah, and you can come in, laying all your laws down as a new manager, and you could lose them in an instant like that. And that may be what's happened. But a manager who makes in-game changes is considered an absolute a god. What a fantastic. He's not making pre-game changes. You know, he doesn't want to do that. Why not, for heaven's sake? You know, why wouldn't you?
Run my system.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, why wouldn't you? You know, so he seems to think that that's ideal. So if you're a genius for making pre-game changes, tell you what, be a genius, change the game, change the way you play before the game, then you might have some results.
I also, the idea, look, we've only had the Premier League here for 11 years. Mm-hmm. But the idea that United could finish 15th on the table or worse, and let's be honest, I don't believe they're moving up the table right now, right? I mean, they only have, I think they only, I don't even know if I believe they're going to hold water. I think they only are going to continue to fall further. So maybe they'll get healthy as the season goes along, but I think 15th might be your best case scenario for them right now, because it doesn't look like they're gaining any momentum whatsoever.
They're very lucky that there's some poor teams below them, so far below them, because I could see them ending up 4th or 5th from the bottom. I really could, the way they're going. I'm old enough to remember the last time they got relegated in the 70s, and it didn't seem as bad as it is now, and it was a one-season blip. They came right back up. But what I would say to Man United supporters is, look, welcome to the world of everybody else, you know, because I know it seems catastrophic because it's like a juggernaut like Man United. But this is what we all have to deal with every season, isn't it? Most of us. So, yeah, welcome to my world.
All right, we usually do our target man, upset pick of the week, and then survivor picks. But EPL matches are going on right now as we're taping this, and then this weekend we have FA Cup. You're just kind of pulling raffle tickets or like buying a scratch-off ticket, trying to pick who's going to do what in the FA Cup rounds. But Chris, you were telling me about the way the FA Cup, how important it was in the English soccer world, even especially when you were growing up.
Yeah, it's lost a bit of its shine recently, unfortunately. And there's a number of reasons for that, and I get it, but I'll tell you a bit of a historical story about what the FA Cup was here. So back in the day, it used to be one of 2 or 3 live games that you could watch all season. Now you can watch whatever you want live all the time. So it was a big day. It was a massive day. It was like the Super Bowl date on the calendar, and it was always a 3 o'clock kickoff. TV coverage would start at 9 a.m. The cameras would be in the hotels of the players, so they'd show the players having their breakfast. They might interview a player or two. The players would be cracking a joke, whatever. They wouldn't stay with them for half an hour, but they'd do a couple of minutes, and then they'd go back to the studio. Then they'd show clips on how the two teams got there, and you'd watch that. Then they get on the bus. There'd be a camera on the bus. Can you imagine that these days? You imagine TV these days? Camera on the bus, interviewing some of the players. You get to know the personality of the players. Some be cracking jokes, some be pretty quiet. And so you'd be watching this on television from 9 o'clock, and this would go on till 6 p.m. the cameras would follow them onto the pitch. A lot of those players, first time on Wembley Stadium, they'd be looking around in amazement at the Wembley Stadium. The semi-finals weren't at Wembley then, just the final, so that was special. The semi-finals used to be at Aston Villa or Man United or whatever. And so it was the country stopped to watch the game. There were two main channels on English television back then, back in the day, 70s, 80s. They'd both cover it. They'd both put it on live, so you'd pick your favourite commentator, watch the game, and then they'd do it would 6 o'clock it would finish. Then the highlights would be on about 10 p.m. again. Yeah. So it would be it was constant all day. It was just a big game, whether your team was in it or not. And it always seemed to be. It was the end of May. Always seemed to be baking hot that day for some reason. Like him upstairs knew that it put good weather on and what have you. There's a pageantry of the Queen and the marching bands and all the business.
And now it just seems like it's a little bit of an afterthought, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, and it's down to, and here's what really gets me goat. They've changed the structure of it to accommodate the packed schedules of the few. And it's only the few. It's the teams, the big boys who are playing in European competitions every year, making gazillions of amounts of money, and the rest. And here's where they've changed it. This is what gets me goat. They've changed the rules so there's no replays. So Man City, bless them, don't have to do a replay, or Liverpool don't have to do a replay. Well, back in the day, Tamworth held Spurs to a draw after 90 minutes. That wouldn't have gone to extra time. Yeah. That would have gone to a replay at the Spurs ground.
Which would be incredible, right?
So for Tamworth, amazing.
It'd be unreal, yeah.
Yeah, Tamworth has 4,000 in their ground. Yeah. Spurs, 60 odd?
Yeah.
In the FA Cup, they share the gate receipts. So half of that money of 60,000 for Tamworth, that would have kept that Tamworth club afloat for the next however many years.
Yeah.
And they talk about wanting to protect the club, stop them going out of business, etc., etc. That's just the opposite.
Seems like it's just lip service. And the other side of it too, I think, is that it's if you don't want to win. I love the idea. I think part of the chess match for Europe is, okay, am I really going to try to play all my guys in the Carabao Cup? Am I going to try to play in the FA Cup? We're going to put the kids there, and if we end up in the final or semifinal, okay, cool. Then we'll play our players depending on what the schedule looks like. But I think that's part of the strategy of it that I hate to see kind of be diminished right now, even though once we got access to FA Cup in America, it was not what you were referring to in the 70s and 80s. That's Chris Carroll. I'm Will West. Remember, like, subscribe. If you want to see more content like this, it's premiere on the Sports Source Digital Network.